Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Charts with Dan. Yes, it is Monday instead of Tuesday. I'm doing some traveling this week, and today's a travel day for me, so we are having to use the dreaded estimates. I know, I hate it as much as you do, but it's okay because I don't think there's a whole lot that's going to change once we get final numbers later today. And without further ado, let's look at the box office for this past weekend, which saw the second week's performance for Marvel's latest film, Thunderbolts. It dropped 55.5% in week 2, which is fine. This is really just, when you look at it from a box office level, just an okay performing movie. It wasn't a great opening or a terrible opening. This isn't a great hold or a terrible hold. It's okay. $33.1 million. Its domestic total now is at $128.4 million. Sinners continues to hold well. Really no controversy about how that movie's doing. It dropped 36.3%. It has yet to drop, I think, more than 40% in any of its 4 weekends at the box office. It brought in another $21.1 million. It's now at $214.4 million. A Minecraft movie in its 6th week of release dropped off 42.1%. It added almost $8 million to its box office total, and it's now at $408 million, so it's crossed that $400 million mark domestically. The Accountant 2 had a better hold in week 3 than it did in week 2. It dropped 35.8%, came in right around $6 million. It's broken the $50 million barrier domestically. Clown in a Cornfield rounds out the top 5 at $3.65 million. This was a low-budget film, reportedly around $1 million, so it's not a huge debut, but the budget also wasn't huge either. In 6th place is Shadow Force, which brought in just around $2 million. Actually, numbers 6, 7, and 8 are all right around $2 million. This will get sorted out with the final numbers. This is not a great debut for Shadow Force. Reportedly, it had a budget around $40 million. But it's also been said that about 2/3 of the production costs recovered by international sales for the film. So it's a bad debut, but not as bad as it might look on the surface. Josh Hartnett's Fight or Flight also debuts around $2 million. Not a great debut there. And Until Dawn drops 47.7% and also brings in around $2 million. Its domestic total now is above $18 million. The Amateur dropped 42.7% in its 5th week for a $1.1 million weekend. It's approaching $40 million domestically. And The King of Kings dropped 60.2% in week number 5. Again, this was very heavily tied to the Easter holiday. $680,000. Its domestic total is now at just over $59 million. 3 movies dropped out of the top 10 this past weekend. Warfare, which was in the top 10 for 4 weeks, Hit, The Third Case, and The Surfer are also out of the top 10 after just 1 week. Looking at the biggest theater count changes for this past weekend, this I don't understand. Snow White had the biggest theater change, adding 1,020 theaters for a total of 1,330. So Disney last weekend wanted to pull Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith, which was doing really well because they didn't want it to compete at all with Thunderbolts. And then for the second weekend of Thunderbolts, they put a movie in that wasn't going to do any better than it already was. I think it brought in like $350,000 this weekend and said, yeah, let's throw it in 1,000 more theaters. Explain that to me. That just makes absolutely no sense. With the second biggest theater change, we had The King of Kings, which lost 946 theaters. It's now in 1,089. The Amateur lost 935 theaters. It's now in 1,200 theaters. The Legend of Ochi was briefly in wide release and now is basically almost out of theaters. It lost 863 theaters. It's now in just 141. And Warfare lost 596 theaters. It's now out of wide release in 719. This is what I like to call our box office road to recovery. The blue line is the weekend average from 2015 to 2019. The red line is the average from 2021 to 2024. And the dotted black line is every weekend this year. And you can see with Thunderbolts not holding up spectacularly well, no other major releases hitting theaters this past weekend, we dive back down to about where we've been the last few years. We're going to be looking for a big rebound, though, this upcoming weekend with Final Destination Bloodlines. If that movie can do well, along with hopefully the sustained performance of Thunderbolts and the continued performance of Sinners, we can get that graph going the right way again. So let's talk a little bit about Thunderbolts. When you look at it as far as how much it dropped this second weekend compared to more recent Marvel movies, it actually doesn't look too bad. This is the weekend 1 to weekend 2 drop off for every movie. in the MCU. All of these orange titles at the back, these are more recent Marvel titles, post 2020. And you can see that Thunderbolts actually is more toward the front of the pack. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, and Deadpool and Wolverine are the only post-2020 titles that had smaller drops in their second weekend than Thunderbolts. Right now, it's wedged right there in between Guardians of the Galaxy, Guardians Volume 2, Avengers Infinity War. That may change a little bit when we get those final numbers, which is why I say it's an okay drop. It certainly did better than a lot of other recent Marvel films have, but it also opened lower than a lot of these films. So you kind of have to take that into consideration. And really, this is just sort of a straight down the middle release. I mean, I know that's a boring story, but I don't think it's going to be spectacularly financially successful. We didn't see a 35, 40, 45% drop, so it looks like it's going to act like a normal superhero film. It's not going to be a spectacular failure either, and it all comes down to what Marvel expected from this movie. It's not a breakout hit. That's for sure, which I think is kind of a shame because it's better, in my opinion, than a lot of other recent Marvel films, but it also is probably paying the price for many of their recent disappointments, both in theaters and also on Disney+. This is the MCU franchise tracker, which is now the top 35 MCU films, because I can't fit any more on this screen. Essentially, this is all movies except for the Marvels, which is at number 36. You can see that Thunderbolts is now the 35th highest grossing MCU film at $128.4 million. It's about $6 million behind The Incredible Hulk. If it can get to that $200 million mark, then it will compete potentially with Captain America Brave New World to be the highest grossing MCU film released this year, and then we'll see how Fantastic Four First Steps does later this summer. When you adjust for inflation, Thunderbolts is still 35 out of 36. It's about a little less than $60 million behind Eternals, and if it gets to that $200 million mark, it really doesn't move too much further up this chart. So the MCU not really turning the ship around box office-wise with Thunderbolts. Let's see if it can do that as far as public sentiment, and the fact that people enjoyed this film, really that could pay dividends for Fantastic Four, not so much Thunderbolts. Sinners has been a frequent topic on this show, and that's because it has been doing incredibly well, even as we get into the beginning part of the summer box office season, and it keeps breaking onto all of these top 10 lists, etc. These are the 10 highest grossing horror films of all time domestically, and I'm going to say right now, as always, horror can be a subjective genre when you're talking about what is or what isn't a horror film. These are my determinations. If you decide that one or more of these films is not eligible, then just throw Get Out and Us on this list because they would be numbers 11 and 12. But according to my determinations, my judgment calls, these are the highest grossing horror films domestically. It is number 1. This is unadjusted for inflation, of course, followed by The Sixth Sense, Jaws, I Am Legend, and The Exorcist. Signs is in 6th place, and right now Sinners is the 7th highest grossing horror film domestically of all time, and it still has room to grow. It should clear Signs easily. It should clear The Exorcist easily. If it gets up to $250 million, you're in I Am Legend, Jaws range, so we could see it going up as high as 4, 3. I mean, if it really legs out as high up as number 2 on this list, I don't know if it's got quite that much left in the tank, but this is going to be a top 5 film when it comes to horror domestically, and this is a list that we first looked at last week, the highest grossing films from a black director or co-director. Sinners is now at number 6 on this list. It moved past Captain America Brave New World and Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse over the past week, and $12 million more dollars, that's not going to be a problem. It's going to be in the top 5, which means that Ryan Coogler is going to have 3 of the top 5 highest grossing films domestically ever by a black director or co-director. It just goes to show you the strength of the work that he's done in the last less than a decade. So we talked about the mediocre performers, we've talked about the solid performers, but this week saw one of the worst performers of all time by a certain metric. It was not a movie that was in the top 10. It was the reimagined telling of Romeo and Juliet called Juliet and Romeo, which was a musical, and it was one of the worst ever openings for a film in 1,000 theaters or more, which is basically, according to my metrics, in my opinion, one of the worst openers ever for a movie in wide release. You see it there at number 5. Its estimated numbers at $350,000. Now, if it added, let's say, $31,000 when the final grosses come in, then it wouldn't be on this list. but I don't know. I'm skeptical that that's going to happen. Based on the estimated grosses at number 5, right behind Creature from 2011, National Champions, which is a sports drama from 2021, Transylmania, which was a horror movie spoof released in December 2009, and then the worst ever opening in 1,000 theaters or more, a movie called Call Jane, which opened to $244,000 back in October 2022. I've actually seen Call Jane. It was a Sundance movie. It's not a bad film. The release strategy obviously just wasn't there. And speaking of release strategy, Juliet and Romeo was distributed by a company called Briarcliff. They also distributed Sweetwater, which is number 6 on this list. They also distributed Sneaks, which we talked about as one of the worst openers ever, in 1,500 or more theaters. And they were the distributor for a lot of other films that almost made both of those charts. Briarcliff is a company that's only about 6 years old, and they've really been notable for being the distributor of some fairly low-performing Liam Neeson action films, and also picking up some controversial movies like The Apprentice and Magazine Dreams, movies that other distributors just wouldn't touch. And with The Apprentice specifically, and the fact that Sebastian Stan and Jeremy Strong were able to get Oscar nominations, that's a good thing. But when you look at the fact that Briarcliff is putting up some all-time worst numbers for a movie in 1,000 or 1,500 theaters, I think it's pretty obvious that they're trying to run before they can walk. You just don't do this that many times without either not understanding how to effectively market these movies or not understanding which movies to put in wide release. So Briarcliff is one of these companies that we should watch, because if this keeps happening, then fewer and fewer people are going to be open to working with them, and that could spell real trouble for the company. It's not quite a Lionsgate level disaster yet. Lionsgate has had some pretty poor releases on a much bigger scale. But Briarcliff is one that's really got to do some fine-tuning to their formula here. Too big to fail does not exist when we're talking about small distributors like this. So it was a bit of a lull at the summer box office this week, but it's looking to pick up this upcoming weekend with the release of Final Destination Bloodlines, which, unless something goes really wrong, is going to be the #1 movie at the box office when we're sitting here next week talking about what just happened at the movies. And that led me to this week's trivia question, and it was something I had to do a bit of deep research on. Since 1980, only 3 sixth entries in a horror franchise have opened #1 at the domestic box office. What are they? And if you're able to get this without pausing and researching for like 45 minutes like I did, then I'm going to be very impressed. There are some caveats that we're going to talk about, but the 3 sixth entries in horror franchises that have opened #1 since 1980, according to my research, are Scream 6, Alien Covenant, and Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare. Now, Alien Romulus is the 6th movie with the Alien title, but it's 7th in the franchise if you count Prometheus, and I think that you have to. Also, The Exorcist Believer is number 6 in the Exorcist franchise, if you count Dominion, prequel to The Exorcist, which I don't. It's an alternate cut to an existing movie. I don't count it as a separate film. So the next Exorcist film that comes out, in my book, will be 6th in the franchise. So if Final Destination Bloodlines is able to open at #1 this upcoming weekend, then it will become just the 4th sixth entry in a horror franchise to open #1 in the modern record-keeping era. And Final Destination Bloodlines really kicks off the second half of May, which is packed with movies that people are excited to see. Last week, our member question, which can be voted on by people who are members here on the YouTube channel, was about which upcoming May release you're most excited to see. And I have to say, I'm so grateful that we have a lot of members here on the channel, but I am a little disappointed at the instruction following skills that they demonstrated on this poll, because I said both in the poll that I posted on the YouTube channel itself and here on the show that you should put the movie that you're most looking forward to in the comments of the poll, but if your favorite's already there, then you should upvote your favorite, because it makes it a lot easier for me to calculate who wins. People didn't necessarily, let's say, listen to that, but I'm still able to get some results. The clear winner as far as the remaining May release that the members of on the channel here are most looking forward to was Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. It got 130 votes, and 11 different people posted that it was the movie that they were most looking forward to. In second was Lilo and Stitch with just 16 votes. It had 4 different posts. Then we had Bring Her Back. I'm excited to see that that made this list. With 15 votes, there were 3 different comments that said Bring Her Back. Then we had The Phoenician Scheme with 11 upvotes. The only movie on this list that only had 1 comment saying that that was the favorite with the upvotes underneath. There's something somehow fitting about the fact that a Wes Anderson movie was the one that inspired the meticulous attention to detail from the viewers to not list it again in the comments, but to just upvote the person that already did. And then rounding out the top 5, also with 11 votes, was Final Destination Bloodlines. Now, I've been watching a lot of Taskmaster recently, and I'm tempted to go all Greg Davis and say that all of the other entries are thrown out because they did not adhere to the task that was set, but I'm not going to be that petty. Mission Impossible was the winner by far, but what I am going to do is give the members here on the channel a chance to redeem themselves. Because with another Final Destination movie hitting theaters this weekend, I'm asking another open-ended poll question, and that question is, what is your favorite horror franchise that began in or after the year 2000? So what I want you to do, if you're a member here on the channel, you can go vote on the poll right now. List your favorite in the comments of that poll, and if your favorite is already there, just upvote it, because I bet there's going to be a lot of answers, and I want to make sure I get an accurate count. The 5 franchises with the most upvotes will be revealed next week. I believe in you. I think that we can do this together. By the way, some examples of 21st century horror franchises that would be eligible: Annabelle, The Conjuring, Cloverfield, Final Destination, the US version of The Grudge, Insidious, It, which I'm counting because it wasn't theatrical until the 21st century, The Nun, Paranormal Activity, A Quiet Place, Resident Evil, The Purge, the US Ring franchise, Saw, Sinister, Smile, Terrifier, the X trilogy, or maybe your favorite isn't here. The point is, pick your favorite franchise that started in the 21st century, and I'm excited. There's so many different possibilities. I'm excited to see what comes up at the poll this upcoming week. Let's turn now to the top 5 movies outside of the US and Canada. These are the top 5 films internationally. At number 1 was Thunderbolts, which brought in another $34 million, followed by a Minecraft movie, which brought in $12.5 million, Sinners, which brought in $6.6 million, The Dumpling Queen, which is a movie from China, that brought in $6.4 million. And believe it or not, number 5 is Karate Kid Legends, which debuted in a few countries. I think Mexico actually might have been one of them. A couple of weeks before we get it here at the end of the month in the United States, it brought in $5.7 million. When you take those international grosses, you combine them with our domestic grosses, we get our top 5 films worldwide. And Thunderbolts was number 1 with another $67.1 million, a 58.6% decline. So we saw about the same results worldwide as we saw here domestically. It's now at $272.1 million. Sinners dropped 36.2%, brought in another $27.7 million worldwide. It's at $283.3 million. A Minecraft movie dropped 49.3%, brought another $20.4 million in. It's now at $909 million. I still think it's going to be very close as far as whether it hits $1 billion or not. If it keeps slowing at this rate, I think it might fall just shy, but you never know. These things have a way of sticking around. The Accountant 2 dropped 42.4%, brought in around $9.5 million. Its worldwide total is now at $82.1 million. And The Dumpling Queen dropped 62% for a $6.39 million weekend. Its worldwide total, which is basically its Chinese total, is now at $39.7 million. Looking at the top 35 MCU films by worldwide gross, Thunderbolts is now at number 34, ahead of The Incredible Hulk. It's about $100 million behind Captain America, The First Avenger, and The Black Widow. Then if it can get to $400 million, it will pass Eternals, and again, we'll see where it goes from there. We've got so much more to break down, but before we do, I want to thank the sponsor for this week's show. This episode is brought to you by Mando. I don't know about you, but I'm happy that it's spring and I can be outside again, taking a walk, hanging out with friends, mowing the lawn, minus the whole mowing the lawn part. And when I'm outside all day, it's important to have a deodorant that lasts as long as I do. Luckily, I found Mando. I'm a sweater, and I don't mean the garment, and nothing is worse than making a day of it outside and worrying that my deodorant is going to quit before I do. But I don't have to worry about that with Mando because it keeps me smelling fresh all day long, no matter how long that day is. Especially because I like to use a combo of Mando's cleansing bar in the shower, solid deodorant afterwards, and a spritz of their spray deodorant to top it all off. Mando's safe to use anywhere on your body and was created by a doctor who saw how body odor was being mishandled. All Mando products are baking soda free and paraben free, and they come in a variety of scents. My personal favorite is Mount Fuji, but I've tried them all and they smell great. And you know what? So do I. Mando's starter pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice, like a mini body wash or deodorant wipes, and free shipping. As a special offer for fans of the show, new customers get $5 off a starter pack with my exclusive code that equates to over 40% off your starter pack when you use code DAN at shopmando.com. That's SHOPMANDO.com. Please support the show and tell them that I sent you. Smell fresher, stay drier, and boost your confidence from head to toe with Mando. Let's take a look now at what I like to call our specialty charts domestically, and we will start with the top per theater averages. And Friendship was number 1. This is a new film from A24 starring Tim Robinson and Paul Rudd. I can't wait to see it. It's expanding into wider release in the next couple weeks, but it had a fantastic per theater average in just 6 theaters, mostly in New York and Los Angeles. It brought in $75,317 per theater, one of the best averages so far this year. We'll look at those numbers in just a second. In second place was Caught by the Tides, which brought in $16,900 per theater in 2 theaters. Caught by the Tides is a quasi-experimental film from director Jia Zhangke, made up of footage shot over 2 decades. Then we have Ada, My Mother the Architect, a documentary about Ada Karmi Melamed, a New York architect who moved to Israel in the 1980s and designed some of their most high-profile buildings. Then we have Pavements, which is a documentary about the band Pavement, which brought in $7,649 per theater in 3 theaters, and Thunderbolts rounds out the top 5 at $7,644 per theater in each of its over 4,300 theaters. Now, there are often movies that are kind of stragglers, so if there are updates to this chart, I will talk about it on the show next week. But I want to talk about Friendship's per theater average. As of now, and A24 usually gives their final grosses on Sunday, it's just behind the Encampments for the best per theater average of the year so far, only about $1,000 behind. It's ahead of Secret Mall Apartment, extremely unique dynamic, and a Minecraft movie. So we will see in the next couple weeks if Friendship can translate this success in a very limited number of theaters to the same sort of success, although not the kind of blockbuster that we're seeing as far as these numbers, in wider release. These are the top 5 films in limited release this past weekend. At number 1 is A Holdover, Guru Nanak Jahaz. In its second week, it made just over $479,000. Then we have Friendship in those 6 theaters, which made just over $450,000. In third place is #Single, a Telugu language rom-com from India, which brought in $420,000. Then we have Raid 2, not The Raid 2, but Raid 2, a holdover from last week at $195,000. And another Telugu language film, this is a horror comedy from India called Subam, which brought in $148,000 in an unknown number of theaters. This is our updated look at the 2025 domestic summer box office. I've put any film that's grossed more than $1 million so far this summer on the chart. Of course, Thunderbolts easily at number 1 at $128.4 million, followed by Clown in a Cornfield, Shadow Force, Fight or Flight, and The Surfer starring Nicolas Cage, which has moved past that $1 million point. Looking at my predictions for the summer versus the actual summer chart so far, really the only relevant number is that I predicted Thunderbolts to be number 8, and it's currently number 1. I almost put Final Destination Bloodlines on this chart, and if it opens huge this upcoming weekend, then I might already be looking silly as far as what movies I did pick and what movies I did not pick as the 10 highest grossing domestic films of the summer. This is the 2025 annual domestic box office, so this is the entire year. A Minecraft movie is number 1. Sinners is now the second highest grossing film domestically of 2025 at $214.4 million. Captain America Brave New World moves down to number 3. Thunderbolts moves up 2 spots. It's now the 4th highest grossing film domestically of the year. Also the 4th movie to pass $100 million domestic this year. Dogman moves down 1 spot to number 5. Snow White moves down 1 spot to number 6. The King of Kings stays put at number 7. The Accountant 2 is now on the chart at number 8. That moves One of Them Days down to number 9. Mickey 17 down to number 10. And Paddington in Peru off of the 2025 domestic top 10. These are the top 10 films worldwide for 2025. Nudja 2 is at number 1 with $2.1 billion. A Minecraft movie, as I mentioned before, has now passed $900 million at number 2. Detective Chinatown 1900s at number 3, followed by Captain America Brave New World and Sinners. Thunderbolts moves up 2 spots to become the 6th highest grossing film of the year, and it should be in the top 5 by next week. Snow White is down 1 spot to number 7. China's Creation of the Gods 2 is down 1 spot to number 8. Dogman stays at number 9, and Bridget Jones' Mad About the Boy stays at number 10. So that's what's going on at the box office. So let's take a look at what's happening in the world of streaming, and we'll look first at the latest numbers that we have from Netflix. New numbers will be hitting tomorrow, but these are the numbers for April 28th through May 4th, Star Wars Day. And at number 1 is a movie called Extraterritorial. It's a Netflix original film. It's a German movie about a mother searching for her missing son inside the U.S. consulate. Reviews weren't particularly great, but for some reason, this movie drew in huge numbers in its first week. 38.33 million total views. That bumps Havoc, which is doing well in its own terms, down to number 2 at 26.53 million views. In third place was the debut of Tina Fey's new series, The Four Seasons, which brought in 11.88 million views. You Season 5 stays in the top 5 at 10.93 million views. The Eternaut comes in at number 5. This is an adaptation of a famous Argentinian comic taking place in a post-apocalyptic setting. It brought in 10.8 million views. Bullet Train Explosion drops down to number 6. Jewel Thief The Heist Begins is at number 7. Weak Hero Class 2, which has become a Netflix original series, is at number 8. I Hostage stays in the top 10 at number 9. And Where the Crawdads Sing cracks the top 10 at 5.86 million views. And when we talk about how well Extraterritorial did for this viewing period, it was the second best movie debut of the year for Netflix. It's only behind Back in Action and not that far. Back in Action opened at 46.79 million views. Extraterritorial had 38.33. That's way above Havoc at 29.78 million views, as well as The Electric State, which opened at 25.22 million views, and Kinda Pregnant at 25.13 million. It also had the second best Netflix debut of the year for any program, ahead of American Murder, Gabby Petito, Havoc, and The Electric State. And it had the third best week for any movie on Netflix, whether it was the debut week or not, behind the first 2 weeks of Back in Action, which had a matching 46.79 million views in week number 1 and week number 2. We'll see what Extraterritorial does in week 2. And it was the 5th best number as far as overall weekly views for all programming on Netflix in 2025. Squid Game Season 2 still leads the way with 58.12 million views for the first week of the year, which was its second week of release. Then we had the first 2 weeks of Back in Action, the second week of Adolescence at 42 million views, and Extraterritorial in 5th place with 38.33 million views in its debut week. Looking at the most watched 2025 Netflix movies, Havoc is new to the list. It enters the chart at number 6. I Hostage moves up to number 7. Despicable Me 4 is still at number 8. The Secret Life of Pets 2 moves down to number 9. And Kinda Pregnant moves down to number 10. La Dolce Villa is off the list. And Counterattack moves up to number 3, which bumps Ad Vitam down to number 4. Back in Action still number 1 at 149.84 million views. And these are the most watched programs on Netflix in 2025. Original series, movies, everything that they have to offer. Havoc also enters this chart at number 8, which bumps Zero Day down to number 9, and American Murder, Gabby Petito down to number 10. It is very close to overtaking The Electric State. Ad Vitam moves down to number 6, Counterattack moves up to number 5, and the 4 most watched programs on Netflix so far this year are The Life List at number 4, Squid Game Season 2 at number 3 with 126 million views, Adolescence at number 2, and Back in Action at number 1. Let's take a look now at the latest numbers from Nielsen. Now, these are domestic numbers only, not worldwide numbers like we just saw with Netflix. And they're about a month delayed because that's how long it takes Nielsen to get us the numbers. So these are for April 7th through the 13th. And we'll look first at the most watched streaming movies in the US. At number 1 was G20, Amazon's action film starring Viola Davis. It brought in 8.6 million hours watched. Moana 2 still holding well on Disney Plus. It was in second place at 6.5 million hours watched. Then we had The Life List at number 3, Mufasa the Lion King at number 4. The Croods returns to the list on Netflix at 4.6 million hours watched. One of Them Days is still hanging around the top 10. The Dark Knight is at number 7. This is actually, believe it or not, the first time, according to my records, that The Dark Knight has appeared on the Nielsen streaming charts for movies. It brought in 3.48 million hours of watch time, followed by Lucy on Netflix at 3.43 million hours watched per episode. And the top 10 is rounded out by Despicable Me 4 at number 9 and Wicked at number 10. These are the most watched streaming shows for April 7th through the 13th. At number 1 was The White Lotus. This was directly following the finale episode, so a lot of viewership. I think people catching up with the whole season to see what the buzz was all about. In second place was the newest season of Black Mirror with a strong debut at just over 18 million hours watched. Then we have Grey's Anatomy, 1923, and Netflix's Pulse. The Handmaid's Tale returns to the top 6. This is the debut of its latest season, which is also its last season. Bluey's at number 7. Love on the Spectrum US is at number 8. The Pit makes its debut on the overall top 10 at 14.2 million. This was finale week for The Pit. So again, I think a lot of people tuning in to see what the buzz was about. And Family Guy returns to the chart and rounds us out at number 10. These are the top streaming shows when you break them down by watch time per available episode. So the total number of hours watched by the number of episodes that people can watch. At number 1 was Bad Influence, The Dark Side of Kidfluencing, which brought in 2.94 million hours watched. This was a docuseries on Netflix. At number 2 was Pulse, Netflix's medical drama, at 1.54 million hours watched per episode. Then we have The Residence at number 3, The White Lotus at number 4, coming in just under a million hours watched per episode. 1923 is at number 5, Million Dollar Secrets at number 6. The Pit is at number 7 at 946,000 hours per episode. Love on the Spectrum US is at number 8, Black Mirror is at number 9, and Reacher rounds out the top 10 with just over 400,000 hours watched per episode. And a quick update to the most watched library streaming series of the year through April 13th. These are the non-original series. SpongeBob SquarePants hits the top 10. It's there at number 9. That moves Younger down to number 10. The Rookie's at number 8. The White Lotus moves up to the 7th most watched library streaming series. It's considered library because it airs on HBO. And overall, it is the 10th most watched streaming series through April 13th. The Big Bang Theory moves down to number 6, and NCIS moves up to number 5. Bluey is still the most watched library streaming show of the year and the most watched streaming show of the year, period, in the US, according to Nielsen, at 259.6 million total hours watched. And that's all I've got for you this week as far as numbers go. But before I wrap up the show, I did want to give you a heads up on some stuff that you might be interested in watching at home and in theaters this upcoming week. First of all, today, making its debut on Paramount Plus with Showtime is a movie that I think should have been nominated for more awards than it was. A movie called Hard Truths starring Marianne Jean-Baptiste. She's phenomenal in this movie. If you didn't see it around awards season, it did not have a very wide release. You can check that out, and I would recommend that you do so. Tomorrow, on Tuesday, we get the series finale of Andor, the final 3 episodes. I did my breakdown of the last 6 episodes here on the channel this weekend. You can check that out right now. Spoiler alert, I was a big fan. A Minecraft movie will be available for premium video on demand tomorrow. Those are basically those higher price rentals, $25 to rent it for 24 or 48 hours. So maybe you can throw popcorn around your living room instead of throwing it around a movie theater. Snow White will also be available for premium video on demand this Tuesday. Maybe it'll make a rapid comeback. On Wednesday, Demon Slayer the movie Mugen Train will be returning to U.S. theaters along with a first look at the Infinity Castle arc movie that will be hitting theaters later this year. I am now a certified Demon Slayer fan, and I certainly loved seeing Mugen Train in theaters. If you didn't see it in theaters, then I highly recommend it. Also on Wednesday, Ma is re-releasing as part of Blumhouse's Halfway to Halloween series. Ma is a movie that really kind of came and went back in 2019 when it came out, but it gained cult status after that initial release. And also on Wednesday in theaters is the Kingdom of Heaven director's cut. Many people say that they think this is the superior version of Ridley Scott's film. It's been remastered in 4K, and from what I've read, I think this is a one-night only event. On Thursday, the fourth volume of Love, Death, and Robots hits Netflix. It's 10 episodes, including new segments from David Fincher and Tim Miller, and a nutty lineup of stars, including Dan Stevens, Mr. Beast, John Oliver, Kevin Hart, John Boyega, and the Red Hot Chili Peppers. What a crowd. Also debuting on Thursday on Max is Duster, the first episode of a new action series co-created by J.J. Abrams and LaToya Morgan. It's set in the 70s, and Rachel Hilson plays the first black woman to become an FBI agent. Josh Holloway plays her getaway driver. A new episode will premiere every week on Max. Finally, if you missed Paddington in Peru in theaters here in the U.S., it will be making its U.S. Netflix premiere on Thursday. I enjoyed it. Nothing can live up to the greatness of Paddington 2, but it's a fun family film. Opening in theaters everywhere on Friday is Final Destination Bloodlines, the sixth film in the franchise, which launched in 2000, and the first movie since 2011, so there could be some real pent-up audience demand. It features a bunch of people dying in complicated ways, and also the final appearance of Tony Todd, who sadly passed away late last year. Also opening on Friday is Hurry Up Tomorrow, which looks to be a somewhat experimental film from Trey Edward Schultz, director of Waves and It Comes at Night. It stars The Weeknd and Jenna Ortega, along with Barry Keoghan. The Weeknd also co-wrote the film, along with Schultz. In limited release and also streaming on Apple TV Friday is a movie called Deaf President Now. It's a documentary about the 1988 protests at Gallaudet University, a college for the deaf, after the school appointed a non-deaf president. This was a movie that debuted at Sundance. And finally, on Friday, if you missed The Brutalist in theaters, Adrian Brody, I think, is still making a speech, and you can catch the movie on Max. So clear off your Saturday and maybe part of your Sunday and check out The Brutalist. Also on Saturday, Kiki's Delivery Service will be hitting theaters again as part of the annual Studio Ghibli Fest. It's just a delightful movie. It'll be in theaters for a few days. Make some time and watch it if you haven't seen it. And finally, I'm Still Here, which won the Academy Award for Best International Film, will be hitting Netflix here in the US at least on Saturday. This is a really good movie. It played almost nowhere leading up to the Oscars. So if you haven't seen I'm Still Here and it's showing in your region on Netflix, this is a great opportunity for you to catch one of the best movies of 2024. And that's all I've got for you on Charts with Dan today. As I mentioned, this is a travel week for me, but don't worry, because when you run a YouTube channel, you always take your gear. So I'm going to take the gear on the road. You're probably going to get a video or two from the road from New York City from me. And then I'll be right back here in the studio next week to talk about Final Destination Bloodlines and everything else that happened at the box office and who knows what else. If you're a member here on the channel, don't forget to vote in that poll. And thank you to Mando, who sponsored this episode. Check the description below if you want to find out more about them. But most of all, I appreciate you joining me for this episode. Until next time, stay safe, and I'll see you then. Bye.